Hello, this is Mr. Minnick helping my Visual Basic students learn to write methods by doing some of the exercises on Writing Methods Worksheet number 1. You do not have to write the code that goes inside the parentheses on the first line of each method. So you do not need to fill in any code that would have to be there for this all to work when we executed the program. I'm just allowing you to keep those parentheses blank. So that aside, now let's write the code that I do want you to learn here of how to get this to work. Okay, I gave you a big gap between what I call the top bun and the bottom bun. You know, private sub, end sub. Just for context here, yesterday in this class or previously in your course of study, we examined this demo program right here, 3 steps. And we saw how in a program you often have many methods, many private sub end subs. And we are right now just filling in the code that would go inside of one of them. That's what exercise 1 is all about here. Okay, so we have to read this and interpret it and change what's called pseudocode into real code. Well, here's the pseudocode. Causes a program to end. What have we learned already in this school year? What code can be typed, John, that causes a program to end?
Application.
Application.
Oh yeah, exit.
Dot exit. Very good. Is this your final answer, John?
No, you wrote.
Yeah, what I wrote. Is that your final answer?
No.
Why not?
Because you put 3 keys in application.
Okay, what kind of error would that have been if I would have really typed 3 Ps there in my Visual Basic software?
Compile.
Yes, it would have been a compile error, and it would not have allowed me to run the program until I fixed that. Very good. So I fixed that, and that's just, I'm not going to take the time to squeeze it together like you should if this were a homework question. Okay, now is that your final answer, John? What I have written. Okay, any disagreements in my period 11 class? No. Aeon?
You have to put an empty set of characters.
Yeah, it's annoying, but methods always need parentheses after them. Just like the click here has parentheses, that's just what you'll soon see. That's easy to forget because the software puts that there for you anyway. So a lot of people just forget that. John, I'll cut you a break this early in the school year. But you know, strive to be perfect. Mehan, you're on a good track here to be perfect. Now, is that your final answer, John?
Yes.
Yes, and that's exactly correct. So we're done with problem number 1. So there's some code that, when indented for good style here, inside of the top bun and the bottom bun, private top bun and bottom bun, private sub end sub, it works. This all assumes, of course, that there's this program somewhere with a button that probably says the word exit on it, and that button is named BTN exit. The name, the behind the scenes name of that button would have to be BTN exit because that name is sort of built into this header. The first line of a method is called its header. And the person is clicking it, and that's what's causing this code to execute. Moving on to number 2. I've given you the top bun and the bottom bun. You need to fill in the code. It could be 1 or more lines of code. Can anybody in this classroom give me an answer here for number 2? Okay, I guess I'll answer it. Here's how I break it down. Apparently there are 2 objects on this form, that this screen that exists somewhere. There's an object named LBL name, and there's one that's LBL school. And in there's somebody's name like Jane. And in this one, there's somebody's name of their school like YO, short for Why I'm Missing. And the name of these objects would be typed in behind the scenes, but I'll put them here for clarity. And John, do you have a question?
I think I might know how to do it.
Okay, go for it. No, don't say I might know how. Say it confidently, boldly, so I actually hire you someday for a job.
Okay.
And what is the answer, John?
Is it LBL name?
No, don't say is it. Say it is.
It is LBL name dot visible false.
Exactly. Now, if you're wishy-washy, I probably wouldn't hire you even if you got the answer right. Now that you're confident, I know that you'll do things that my company needs to be done out there in the world of software design. Okay, LBL name.visible equals false. That would cause this label to just go away, and which I consider that to be one way of clearing it. And that's partial credit, but only people that read directions thoroughly would remember to write the other line of code, and it does have to be written as a second line of code. You cannot just continue it on here to the right. So LBL school.visible equals false would also be needed here for full credit. We have studied the visible property, and we have studied that LBL is the prefix for labels, and we know that false and true can be typed here depending on what you need to do. Don't ever type .invisible. There is no invisible property. It's .visible. Okay, there is another answer for this. Can anybody mention the answer? Somebody named Sydney in the other class asked if this other way is possible, and she was exactly correct, even though I wasn't really thinking it. You could also replace those two lines of code with LBL name .text equals, does anybody remember what the empty string is?
Is it the two parentheses?
Good job, Lucy. Good job. Two empty double quotes. And we'd have to do that for school as well. Yep, they're quotes, not parentheses, they're quotes there. But we'd have to do that, and that would also work. The only difference between these two answers, which I really don't care at this point in the class, which way you do it, if you were all snazzy and you had like a back color that was yellow here behind Jane, doing it this bottom blue way would cause just the letters Jane to be gone, but you would still have the blue, the yellowish background there. So it would be sort of like this, but it would still have the yellow if you did it this lower way. Only the text would be replaced with nothingness, empty string. However, if you wrote the code like this up above, the whole text box, including the yellow color, would vanish. So even if there was a yellow color there behind YO, the whole thing would be gone, and the background color of the whole screen itself would sort of show. So there is a slight difference between these two answers, but you know, for purposes right now in this course, I give full credit to either way of doing it, since we have studied both of these examples. Okay, and number 3, I am asking you to write out the top bun and the bottom bun. So follow with me here. Let's write private sub, but write small if you're using our Note Anytime software and the stylus that the school district gave you. And write end sub down here, but leave room in between for a line or two of code. And now we have to decide or figure out what is the name of the method that is being written here. Well, read the question. It says somewhere here, when someone clicks a button named btn start. So you always put the name of the object, in this case btn start, right here, after private sub, and you always put an underscore, and then you put the name, you put the action that the user did, like what verb. Well, it's a click, because I used the word clicks here in my directions. So you need the word click with a capital C, by the way. This is exactly what was already done for you up in problem 2. When a button clear was clicked, this happened up here in exercise 2. But now the button is called btn start. So picture this. Somewhere there's a program running, and maybe there's a little picture of an angry bird there. And this button probably says start on it, and somebody clicks that start, or they touch it if it's an iPad. So that is the interaction that's probably going to happen that causes something to happen. Well, you need an empty set of parentheses here after the word click. That's just annoying, but it has to be there just like it was up in exercise 2. We had an empty set of parentheses after click. Now we need to indent and write the one or more lines of code that are called for. Well, let's reread the question. Causes a message box with the phrase hello to appear. In other words, pop up. What's the answer there, Lauren?
MessageBox.show equals hello.
Okay, close. You got the MessageBox.show correctly, but not dot equal or not equals. You don't use an equal symbol here. How does MessageBox.show work? Recite the Hello World program from that first week of school. MessageBox.show parentheses. You got it. Now we need the word hello in there. Is this your final answer, Lauren? Like that?
No,
With double quotes. That's just, memory comes back to you from like 3 weeks ago when we memorized Hello World. But don't write Hello World in there because the directions only said to, put in hello. I'm tricky like that. You need to read the directions and do exactly what you're being hired to do. And hello is what we're asking for here. So when somebody does click this imaginary button here, a little message box pops up, and it will have the word hello on it, greeting the person that's playing Angry Birds. Pretty cool. Nice little touch to a program to invite somebody and say hello to them when they've agreed to run your program. Then the person would click OK, and that message box would just go away because, well, that's just the way it works. Any questions on this final answer here for number 3? Okay, number 4. We need to write private sub, end sub, and all that. And we have to identify what the name of the method is. Well, the thing that gets clicked here is btn display. So again, a button is clicked, so the name of the private sub, the name of the method is btn display. And it's being clicked, so in Visual Basic, that's represented as the word click with a capital C. And you do need an underscore to separate those two things, little underline symbol. And you need an empty set of parentheses. Now the question is, what code, what meat goes inside this hamburger? Lauren's on a roll here. What do you say, Lauren?
Text input.text
Okay, that's half of it.
equals LVO output. Text too.
Yes. There's the answer. Now, unfortunately, she gave it to me in the wrong order, but I like that boldness. This was the trickiest question on the worksheet, and it didn't take her long at all to get the code essentially right. She just had or reversed it. Let's role play this and just understand why it has to be in that order. LBL output.text equals txt input.text. Let's draw the situation, because that helps me get these questions right. Don't try to do everything in your head. Like design it out, interface it out, so you can truly get Angry Bird knocking down the pig's house rather than the pig knocking down the Angry Bird's house. That would be a whole different game. That just would logically be backwards. That game would have never existed. So let's get this right. Here goes. Let's imagine that somebody has a blinking cursor, and for input, they type in their name, like Joe. And then the purpose of this program is to have a little button that when they click, Joe shows up in this label. So this is a text box up here where they get a blinking cursor. They type JOE and then click, and then JOE appears down here. If that's the way that you want it to work, then the code must be in the, typed the way it is. Let me emphasize. This top input area is a text box named txt input. The bottom rectangle is a label called LBL output. I will give you a tip. Usually text boxes are used for input, and usually labels are used for output. It's just the style in all programming languages. In Google, if you are at Google, this thing where you type words into, it's called an input box because you can type things like your name, Joe, in there. However, where the output shows up, that area is usually called a label. Like this right here, Google's, oh, that's a button. If I do type Joe, and this piece of text here, you could think of that as being a label. You can't click in there and change it. Only text boxes can be clicked inside of and changed. So back to our exercise, this is where the person inputs Joe in a text box. This is the output. Well, the other thing I stressed the other week was that programming languages like VB work from right to left when you have the equal symbol. So whatever is typed into TXT input, the word Joe in this case, that word Joe gets from right to left plugged into LBL output. And that's why it will correctly show up here when somebody clicks this button. If we had this the other way around, let's analyze what would have happened. If the person wrote her incorrect answer here as input txt input.text equals LBL output.text, and then somebody came along and clicked the button, watch what happens. Well, first we have to erase what we have here. Okay, da-da-da-da-da, somebody comes along and types in their name like Jane. Well, let's stick with Joe. Then they click. Well, because this works from right to left, whatever's currently in LBL output, well, nothing. So essentially, an empty string. An empty string, nothingness, goes from right to left and plugs into txt input.text, which is up here, and that causes Joe to be replaced with empty string. Well, guess what? You just cleared out what the person just typed in there. They just typed it in there because they wanted it moved down here, but you just took what was down here and overwrote what they typed in. So this wrong answer right here is wrong because it was written the wrong way around. Because of this right to left business, the answer's got to be written the way we have the answer there. Okay, finally, number 5. If the program runs and you want Hello Saturn to show up in a message box, okay, well look, I already provided the name of the method for you. Form 1 load. The form itself is called Form 1. It's an object, but it's a really big object called Form 1, like planet Earth. You know, all buttons and labels live inside this form, but it's called Form 1. Okay, so when it loads, well, that happens when the program first is launched or double-clicked. So how can we get a message box to pop up with, instead of Hello World, Hello Saturn? I have an answer here from Lucy.
We would do message box dot show and then parentheses, quote, hello pattern.
Perfect. Any questions from my period 11 class? That's a wrap. Thank you.